Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my furry sidekick, Clown Kylie. And we're here today because I'm so excited to kick off my first vlog for the Halloweekend Readathon. October is Kylie costume season, and she wears a lot of really adorable costumes. We post about them on our Bookstagram. She poses with books in costume. Sometimes they make sense, sometimes they don't, other than she looks cute next to a book. And we are bringing some Kylie costumes into our reading vlogs this month as well. Halloweekend is a fantastic readathon brought to us by Lexi at Books with Lexi. It's happening throughout the month of October 2nd to November 2nd, and it happens every weekend, every Thursday through Sunday. It's like a little mini readathon, and I'm super excited to get started with this, and so thankful because Lexi actually invited me to be part of this. I get to host some official sprints for this, and I'm looking forward to that as well. Technically, we're a couple of minutes before it's Halloweekend officially in Lexi's time zone, but since I do unfortunately have to go to work tomorrow, sleepy clown, I decided I would do my rolls tonight, my initial rolls anyway, to figure out what I need to start on tomorrow while I am driving, because I usually like to have an audiobook for my commute, and by usually I mean always. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna put Miss Sleepy Dog down, and we will start our first roll or a couple rolls depending on how things go. I'm using a different setup this time that I haven't used before, so we're gonna see how this works. I'm filming the board with one camera and myself with another camera, and we're going to make this work. So would you like to get down and take a nap? Okay, you're a little too big to fit on the game board, so here we go. Good job. Thank you, buddy. Stay there. Okay, so this is the board. We've got 5 different rooms for the 5 different weekends of the readathon. And I decided, since you can kind of start in any given room, some are going to make life easier, some are going to make life harder. Rather than make the choice, I'm going to roll my little die here. I bought these cute little ghosty dice, which I thought was just perfect for this readathon, since we are essentially trying to catch up with some ghosts and escape a haunted house. So first off, I am going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is just going to be a random reroll, maybe. So let's see what we get. 2. Okay, so we're going to be coming in through the bedroom. Now, one of the ways you can play this is to make sure that you pick up equipment before you get to your ghost, and then move on to one of the exit. So I think what I'm probably going to aim to do is get the equipment, get the ghost, and then this will be next weekend's spot. And I think my objective is probably going to be go from here to here to here to here and finish off in the living room down here to escape at the bottom. So with that, let's do our first roll. I'm going to use this little D12 version of the ghosty dice just as my little placeholder on the map, and we will put him there so he's ready to go in. And first roll, let's go. Okay, we got another 2. So that will not get us very far. So I think we're heading here. So we're going to go 1 and 2. So the idea for this particular room, the yellow room, is to have books that meet the prompt, but also are intimidating. So the prompt for the square that I've landed on is prompt number 9. And that is to read a book written by a BIPOC author or to do an anticipated fall activity. Since tomorrow's a work day, I think activity is probably not my best plan. So I will be picking a book written by a BIPOC author, and I will let you know what that is once I figure that out. I don't know if you can see her, probably not, but we have a Clown Kylie trying to climb into my lap. The problem being, if she jumps onto the desk where she likes to sit when I'm sitting here sometimes, she will mess up the map. So let's see. How about you just stay there? And I think we're going to do a second roll, just in case there's something that inspires me while I'm out and about tomorrow to do an activity or something. So let's see what we got. So roll number 2 is a 4. So I think, I'm not quite sure what Lexi's rules were on this, but since I need to hit the equipment, I think I will just go 1, 2, 3 and just go ahead and stop on the equipment. The equipment prompt for this room is to read a book with technology on the cover or get a spooky book. So I could go buy myself an intimidating spooky book or pick a second book to read. So I don't know which of those I'm going to be doing just yet. I obviously need to give my dog some attention right now, but I will be back once I figure out what my book picks are going to be and let you know. Hello again, friends. I am back because it is officially Thursday. Halloweekend has begun, and I did pick my first book. So my first roll got me to a BIPOC author. We're in the intimidating room. So the combination of those two, I am going to be reading Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a book I'm really anticipating, but also it's historical, which has not been my number one go-to recently. I'm also in the middle of another kind of historical fantasy book, and the timing's probably not my best, but that's okay. This one's historical horror, and historical horror has a better chance of working for me, I think. So this is the gorgeous Owl Crate edition of this one, and I don't know too much about it. It's a historical novel set in the nascent days of the state of Montana, following Blackfeet Indian named Good Stab as he hunts the fields of the Blackfeet Nation looking for justice. What is unveiled is a slow massacre, a nearly forgotten chain of events that goes back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow, told in transcribed interviews with Good Stab, who shares the narrative of his peculiar and unnaturally long life over a series of confessional visits. So it sounds really intriguing. The edition is stunning, but I can get in there. On the back it says, "My blood is not lamb's blood to wash away sin, but ink to trace that sin out, letter by letter." I do have the audiobook for this one, so I will be able to listen on my commute. I have a little bit of time before I have to leave for work, I think, and I can get some coffee and maybe start it before I actually leave this morning. So all signs for a good Thursday. My second role, which was the technology on the cover or obtain a spooky book, that one I actually have a couple options. Considering the last time I had technology on the cover, I really struggled. I did find like 3 different options, all of which sound good. So I'm going to wait until I actually go to start my next book to see what I'm going to choose. And I'll clue you in once I make that decision. I'm not in a decision-making mood, I think. So with that, I am going to go ahead and get my coffee, finish getting ready for work, and start off Thursday. Lexi's doing kickoff sprints, which for me start this afternoon. So I will be sneaking into those from work a little bit and listening in, since I will not be at home and able to participate. But looking forward to a really fun weekend ahead with lots of sprints and lots of good reading. Hello. I am about 40% of the way into Buffalo Hunter x Hunter. I've taken off the dust jacket so I don't mess it up, but you can see it is indeed Buffalo Hunter x Hunter. I have just finished watching Lexi's sprints, and I'm about to sit down, eat some dinner, and then get back into my book. I got about 40% pretty much just listening to it on my commute today, and a little bit after I've been home, and a little bit when I took a break at work. But this isn't really a multitasking book, so maybe not the best book to pick for time where I need to be doing some multitasking at work. So pretty much haven't had a chance to pick it up too much today. So I'm going to sit down with it, read with the audiobook, which I think is the best experience. Honestly, the commute, I was fine listening to the audiobook, but if I tried doing anything else that took a little bit of focus, that was a challenge. It was a challenging commute today. Actually, coming home wasn't bad, but this morning there were 2 different accidents, and it just was street lane closures, debris in the streets, just stressful driving. So it did make my commute longer, which means I got through more of my book, but not exactly the best start to Thursday. So I'm ready to eat my dinner, settle in, hang out with Kylie, snuggle up, and have a relaxing evening going into Friday tomorrow. So hopefully I can make a good dent in this tonight. I don't think I'll finish it tonight. It is not an audiobook that I can speed up a whole heck of a lot. This feels like it's about 400 pages. So it's going a little bit slow, I think, because we have multiple narrators and they're not necessarily accent-wise or voice-wise ones that I can speed up too far without getting lost. So we'll see. It's going a little slower than I would have liked for my first book for a weekend type of readathon, but I am generally enjoying myself. I like the writing in here. I like the descriptions that Stephen Graham Jones gives us. I think the pacing is slow in and of itself, aside from the audiobook being a little slowed down relative to what I'm used to. And I think because we are reading what is essentially a story within a story within a story. I know I gave the synopsis earlier and I realized I kind of skipped that in this update. We start off with a university student who is going to get a journal that actually belonged to her many greats grandfather. He is the pastor here, and she's basically going to be using this as part of her dissertation. And that is the framework of this book to start with. And then she's transcribing what this journal said. So we've got that story within her story. And then this journal itself is writing down conversations that this pastor had with this Native American Good Stab and his experience with encountering something and a creature feature type of a deal there. But also we're getting to hear more about, how Native Americans were being treated, then also the violence of both that, but also this whole creature situation in here. So the story within a story within a story structure, I feel like distances the reader a little bit from the action of the story. And even the central story is being told kind of after the fact because it's someone recounting things that happened in their past to some extent. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's definitely a stylistic choice in here. That's not always my favorite stylistic choice because I do feel a little removed, but I'm not feeling super removed. I am intrigued what's going on. I think the pastors recounting this is an interesting way to tell the story. So I am really interested to see where it's going. So I'm going to have dinner, spend a relaxing evening, hopefully make a good dent, and hopefully definitely be able to finish this by tomorrow night so the weekend itself can go towards reading for my second roll and beyond, because we've got a few more rolls to get through. Hello and happy Friday. It is possibly going to be a little noisy. Kylie's in welcome home mode because I just got home from work. And we have a watch along with Lexi's Patreon for Alice in Borderlands starting a little bit, but I wanted to give you an update before I ignore my reading for some more time. So where I'm at, I have finished The Buffalo Hunter and left with really mixed feelings. I'm disappointed I did not enjoy this more than I did. I found it slow and extremely historical, so it shouldn't surprise me too much that it wasn't 100% a win for me. I still really like the writing, the concepts. Kylie might have just hit the camera too. She is in chaos mode. The concepts and the twist on kind of a classical vampire story, all of those I think worked really well in here. I think it was just the pacing and the historical nature. And like I said, I just feel like I didn't connect to the past timeline story as well, partially because it was historical, but also just that it was a story within a story within a story, and I think that just kind of distanced me a bit from it. At the end, it did pick up my interest a lot more, and I really liked how it ended, and kind of the final few chapters were definitely more my speed. I think I wish that we got more of the present day in here. The present day timeline is kind of the framework for everything, but I wanted to hear from the present day character at Seymour. She's transcribing all of these journals, and I'm picturing her just sitting there with her laptop and transcribing all this really wild stuff happening. And I feel like there could have been more interjections from her in how she was perceiving everything. And this is something that's a story of one of her ancestors. And I don't know, I think that might have maybe engaged me a little bit more. But I am still really glad that I read this. I do think it has a lot of worthwhile messages in here and a lot of really good writing and descriptions. Like I keep saying, I know I'm being repetitive, but anyway, it is what it is. There's a reason I put this in as an intimidating read, but it does knock off a few different prompts for me for this readathon, for my horror bingo that I just put a TBR out for. That's from Sarah at Wicked Reading, and we're off to a good start. I'm also doing Owned October from Tree Reads over on Bookstagram. I own this book, so that works for that because there's a BIPOC author square on that one as well. So I am at least accomplishing quite a bit for this one. And then I do have a second prompt, as you'll recall. I needed a book with technology on the cover, and this is still the Intimidating Room. So what I'm going to do, like I said, I had a few different options, but I'm going to go with Easy Prey by A.B. Whalen. This is a book that the author gifted to me. It's a 2025 release, their latest release that just came out. There's a cassette tape on the cover, and that's technology. And the intimidating factor with this one is just that it's entirely an eyeball read for me. So I wasn't able to pick it up today. I pretty much did no readathon related reading today for that reason, because I finished Buffalo Hunter pretty much on my way to work. I just kind of had the afterword that I read while I was getting some stuff done, and then I've been waiting to get home so I can continue on with this one. I have made it a little bit of the way into it. I started it at the tail end of September, which Lexi has absolutely said is fine to continue a book you're already in if it fits the prompt. It's a very flexible readathon. In this one, it is a thriller. It's a young woman whose sister has died, and at the very, very beginning of the book, we're talking about in the prologue, we know she's killed a man. I would assume this is the man who's responsible for her sister's death. I don't know that that's, necessarily what's going on in here. Basically, we're following Jules, and her sister was blinded by an ex-boyfriend, and she's been very reliant on the family to take care of her all these years. She relatively recently won the lottery, which gave her the freedom to go out on her own, buy her own house, hire the services she needs to support her so she could be independent. What the family didn't know is she met a man, and this man seems to have been making easy prey out of her, and we follow our main character finding her sister deceased And there is an implication that something with this man was involved. We don't know exactly what. So she's essentially on a revenge mission. As it says on the back, he stole her sister's money, her trust, and her life. Now Jules is looking to take everything back, even if it kills her. So I'm very interested to see where it goes. It seems like her parents are supporting her in her revenge mission, which is an interesting twist. I don't feel like we, necessarily see someone going to their parents for help with killing someone or tracking someone down. So that's an interesting one. I think it's been a little bit sad to read about. We are getting some of the story from the sister's perspective. She left some tapes behind of what's been going on in her life that she didn't tell her sister about. She very much has some self-esteem issues. She feels broken because of what the ex did and took her eyes away from her, and she's had to adapt to that. She wasn't born blind. She was blinded as a teenager, I think. So there is definitely some of that. And the family also, I think, has kind of treated her like she can't be independent necessarily in some ways, even as they obviously want her to be happy and have a good life and all of that. So I'm intrigued to see where this is going. I'm about 110 pages into it. So this will be my next priority, is to finish this one up. If I feel like I'm not making it through this one quickly enough, I might come back to you with another roll before I finish this one, just to kind of have a second something going on. But I think the idea is, once the watch along tonight is done, is to kind of buckle down and read my book with my eyes, light a candle, get in the fall vibes, those types of things, and I will report back later. Characters just sat down for a sushi dinner, kind of. So Kylie got jealous. And now she gets a sushi toy. I don't think it's going to be smiling once she gets a hold of it. But hey, sushi for everyone. Okay, it's much later on Friday. Technically, I think it's Saturday already. I'm ready for bed, but I did finish up Easy Prey, and overall I had a good time with this one. I think it did keep me wondering what exactly was going on. I did make a few guesses about a few things, but in general, I think it kept me engaged. I think it definitely was driving home a point. The author's note talks about how the author wanted to make a point of addressing women who are preyed on by men, and not just because this character is blind, but that does allow some extra opportunities perhaps. But also, I think we do see that she figured out some things as well. She didn't save herself, but in this situation, she did find some things out that did wind up leaving some clues for her sisters. So she wasn't entirely not an agent in this situation. The author says at the end that if this makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. This is not something that's supposed to be a good situation happening in here. Kylie kept coughing in the background, which wasn't a problem. She just has a little something, probably the fluff from the toy she was eating earlier, I think, stuck in the back of her throat. But I figured it was just easier to bring her over here, give her some attention, and so forth. So, where was I? I think the author achieved what she meant to, in the sense of feeling uncomfortable. Whether what they wind up doing to this man is appropriate or not would be a really interesting book club type discussion. I think especially when we learn a little bit more about what's behind everything, it complicates matters more. I think in general, I would definitely read from this author again. I'm giving this one a solid 3.5 stars, and it was an easy read once I sat down and read it, which for me at the moment, reading and completely eyeball reading is not my go-to place to go. So I think in general, this one turned out okay. So with that, I am going to bed. I'm not planning to read any more before that, but I do kind of want to see how I'm spending my day tomorrow. So let's go ahead and do some rolls. Is that okay? Can I put you down now? Are you going to fake more coughing so I have to play with you? How about you go to bed? Yeah, you ready to go to bed? Good idea. You stay there. Okay, I've got my camera set up over here. I am starting us off on the equipment, which is where we wound up. And let us roll our dice and see what the next move is. We got a 6. So we are actually making a lot of progress. So generally speaking, we need to go this way to get our ghost. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So our next step is one step away from the ghost. So that is square number 13, which is read a book with only one POV or share your current read. And then while I'm here, obviously our next step is going to be the ghost. And just to see a preview of coming attractions, the prompt for a ghost is to read a book that you can spell witch on the cover or make a fall inspired item. And then after the ghost, I only need to move 3 more spaces. So things are looking up in terms of being able to make it to the door this weekend. I'm not too worried about that anymore. So I think I'll probably try to find a single POV book and see how that goes. Worst case scenario, I will move on to the ghost square and share my current read in order to hit both those prompts. But I think we can make this work. I might pick up a thriller and then a horror. Someone wants to go to bed. So I think what I might do is pick up a thriller for one of these prompts, a horror for the other prompt, just to kind of keep things shaken up a little bit. We'll see. I need to put thought into it. I need sleep first. I'll eventually get to it and be back to you once I have decisions made. Hello again. It is now about noon on Saturday. I've been out to get new nails. I got my first set of kind of spooky season-y mummy nails, and then I came back home, did a little bit of reading, finally made myself some breakfast, been sitting with Kylie in my lap, and just kind of chilling. We have sprints on Tori's channel in a little while, so I am looking forward to that and to actually sitting down and reading. But in the meantime, when last I left you, I needed to find a single POV book. And the one I decided to pick up after a couple of different options came to mind, and I said, okay, I'm reading that, and then I switched and everything else, but I'm now halfway into a book, so I would say I'm pretty settled on this one, and that is The Graceview Patient by Caitlin Starling. This is from St. Martin's Press. I've had this e-arc on my shelf for ages, and I've been nervous to pick it up because this is an author that I've absolutely loved before. The Luminous Dead sticks in my mind as being a very claustrophobic, haunting type of a read that I loved, but then some of her more recent stuff I haven't gelled with. So this one has me wondering how it's going to go, and that's why we're going to count it as an intimidating read. I am now halfway through. I did get the audiobook also from Dreamscape Audio just really recently, and that is helping because I did, while I walked to go get my nails done, listen to a little bit of it, but mostly I'm trying to read this one in print. I think the kind of gothic horror nature of the story might work better in that fashion. In this story, we're following Margaret. She's our single POV and somewhat of an unreliable one for various reasons. She has a very, very rare autoimmune disease that I'm not even going to pretend to know how to pronounce or remember what it's called, but I'm pretty sure it's a fictitious one. But she has this disease and it's very rare. It's hard to find people who have it. There's not much of a support network for people with this disease. There's also not a lot of treatments out there for it. But it causes a lot of issues in her life and she seems to be going downhill. Her doctor, I think it was, points out that there is a kind of experimental protocol that this one place is doing. And it's kind of her only hope. So she goes ahead and signs up for this. And she doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of hope, but she has some that maybe this is going to work. As the book opens, it had a really strong opening because we are meeting Margaret kind of after a lot of treatment and a lot of everything has gone on and she's not doing well. And it's doctors or nurses rather, I think in this case, doing rounds, talking about her with her interjecting here and there, listening to what they're saying about her, what she remembers about it, what she doesn't, what they're leaving out that she remembers. And there's a lot of little hints of things that she's saying, well, they didn't mention this. And we don't know what that means, but it definitely has me intrigued. Every so often we are starting new chapters with like a treatment plan, kind of a form that they're using in terms of what date she checked in, what her projected exit date is going to be, what her current symptoms are. Is she a cooperative patient? All of these types of things, which I think is a really interesting kind of way to kind of keep us up to date on the progression of time and her symptoms and everything else. There have been some really weird things happening. There's definitely been some body gore type stuff happening so far. And I am very interested to see where we're going with this. I don't know that I'm 100% hooked so far, but I've also had kind of a chaotic day as I'm reading it. So I feel like that's doing the book a disservice. I like our main character. I like that she kind of is having these inner monologues that we're privy to about what's going on around her, about the people she's seen, the people who aren't around anymore, and what the reasoning is for that, her own concerns for herself, for other people. And I think this could go well. I think I'm just not sure yet. It is definitely slower, so I think if you're going to pick this one up, it is good to go in with that expectation. But I don't know. We shall see. I will definitely try to focus in, sit down and read during sprints this afternoon and try to get this one done. I think it's reading pretty quickly, I would say. So I think there's a chance I definitely could finish it up in the course of kind of a few sprints this afternoon. I don't think I mentioned this one is out on October 14th. So if it is something that sounds interesting, you might want to check that out as well. well. So with that, I will get going and check in with you later. Okay, it is now about 5 o'clock on Saturday, so quite a bit of time has passed. I've made progress in things. I've procrastinated a lot of things. It's been a day. But let's see, where are we at? I finished up during Tori's sprints the Graceful Patient, and overall I really enjoyed this one. I think it's still not going to beat out Luminous Dead for me in terms of the one that sticks in my head the most, but I think this one worked really well. We've got creepy, kind of trapped within your own body almost sort of a thing. You're fighting against your own body, you're fighting against illness, you're fighting against the medical people around you that you don't necessarily trust, and that creates a sense of isolation and just kind of fever dreamy almost nature to the book. I think there were definitely some moments where my body just involuntarily cringed at what the character was going through physically. I would not recommend this to my friends with medical anxiety. That's definitely going to have some triggers in here, I would say. I think the way this worked in terms of not knowing what was real, what wasn't, kind of constantly reevaluating that, I think was an interesting kind of way to tell this story. The way the setting becomes part of this kind of ambiguous danger nature in the way it's being described. Our narrator is kind of telling us things in the past a little bit and giving us hints of things to come because she's narrating from the future in some ways. Not in a way that got obnoxious with it, I wouldn't say, but I liked that actually in here, and I think it was well done. That's a trope, a stylistic choice that can be a little bit overdone for me in some books, and I think it worked well here. So I think in the end, this one's getting a solid 4-star. The fact that I was like physically impacted by this read definitely ups that. And it's a strong 4-star, verging on 4.5, I'm even going to say. And I did do the audiobook for bits of it when I needed to get up. I was making soup, I was playing with the dog, I was doing a couple things where I needed to put a little bit of attention elsewhere, but honestly, this one I think is one that I really like the most in print, and I did read most of it with my eyes, and the fact that it kept me engaged enough to actually binge read a good chunk of this book, just purely eyeball reading, is again another point in its favor. So with that, we finished that square, and since we landed right next to the ghost, the obvious move was just not even to roll, because you can't roll less than a 1, and move the 1 square over and hit the ghost. And the prompt for that one is to spell witch on the cover, or to make a fall-inspired item. And honestly, I think I'm kind of doing both with this one, because I did make soup, and that's very much a fall vibe for me. Fall and winter, I guess, both. I wound up getting HelloFresh this morning, and had somewhat forgotten the fact that I put 2 soups into my box this week. The soups, I tend to like to make them on the weekend, and then like split them up into 3 servings instead of 2 servings, and use them for lunches to take to work with me. So I prepped that for the week, so that was my making my fall inspired thing. And then for witch, I thought it would be hard, and then I realized Chuck Wendig has a lot of the hard letters in it, and therefore I am picking up, and I'm actually past the halfway point now because I was procrastinating coming upstairs to film. So we've got W, I, T, and C-H up here. So we've got witch on the cover in the author name and the title. This is the Evernight from Illumicrate edition. I know I've got bad lighting in here, so I'm not sure how well it's going to show up, but it's got cool sprayed edges, and on the back it says, "A house at first is not a home. Home is where the heart is," which seems like it should be a kind of heartwarming sentiment, but you know, it's a horror book. So we've got some other things in here, and this is one that has had me a little bit intimidated, just because this is an author, again, who I've enjoyed and who I've really not enjoyed. So it could go either way. With this one, thankfully, it's going well. So this one is following a set of friends, and it's set in 2 different time periods when they were younger, and they're older than I expected going into this. They're more high school-y age. At the older timeline, I was expecting kids, and I don't know why. I think it's because something about the vibes of this one kind of gives me Stand By Me by Stephen King, and I had that impression that it was kids going into the woods, not teenagers going into the woods, but that's neither here nor there. They are teenagers, and they have the typical teenager nurturing attitudes and relationships and all of that. They are off in the woods on their own, and they find stairs, which is weird. And one of their friends goes up the stairs and does not come back down. And he isn't found. And this is disturbing, obviously. Like, he didn't fall off the edge of the stairs. He just kind of disappeared. The present day, we start with them getting back together. One of them is ill. He's basically calling all his cards in, all their old friendship, even though they haven't really stayed in touch well over these years, and summing them back together. And they wind up back in these woods. They wind up back finding some stairs. And it goes from there. I have this book on my horror bingo card from Sarah at Wicked Reading as a book involving liminal spaces. And I wasn't 100% sure if it would work, but in fact it does. And we do get to see what these stairs lead to. And we are following our characters there. I also wasn't sure if this would make it for hard mode when I posted my TBR, because it needs to be an even page book. And every edition online says this is odd pages. But because this is an Evernight exclusive and Illumicrate created an extra page at the end, I'm sure you can't read that, but it's 404 pages in this edition because of that extra chapter, rather, at the end. So I am really enjoying this. I do like the fact that we have this core friendship at the center of the story, and kind of the way they have this pact to support each other, to follow each other into danger or whatever, no matter what. And they are questioning that. Is that the same choice? Are they making good choices? They are bickering, especially, I would say, even more so in the present day, because they don't know each other very well. They've turned out to be kind of very different people than they were as teens, which is understandable. I do like there is a character in here who says some really inappropriate things, uses some very inappropriate, not politically correct, and very despicable language. And I really, really like that one of the friends calls him out on it and is very firm with it and is very much explaining why this is not okay. And I appreciate that, because at first I was kind of cringing when this character was saying these things and not wanting to read it if the character's saying things that are inappropriate. But I think the author handled it well. This is a time period when these terms maybe weren't as well known as being inappropriate, and so forth. We also have a character who uses different pronouns in the present day, and she's very firm with the people she's talking to about that and about kind of the way they don't respect that initially and so forth. So there are a lot of good discussions coming in here. I think it's doing a good job of setting it in the day in which it's set. Well, that didn't make sense. It's doing a good job of showing what teenagers were like at that point, but still calling them out on it and so forth. So I'm going to keep going on this one. I do have the audiobook from the library. I do have a not so pretty straight edge edition that I'm reading as well, because I have a copy that I believe I received from the publisher, which is Del Rey. So I am going to keep going on with this one. I do think I will probably finish this tonight. It reads really, really quickly for a 400-page book. Not that 400 pages is long, but I've been reading a few things kind of on the slower side recently, so I'm glad to know this one's going well so far. So I will check in with you once I finish this one, and then we will figure out what comes next. This is my third attempt to try to film this clip, and heaven help me if it doesn't work. First, the memory card was full, and then I fixed that, and then the battery that I just put in 2 minutes ago that I took straight off the charger was dead. So, don't know what happened there. And now we are joined by a Kylie. It's just chaos tonight. And in the background, hopefully you can't hear it, the neighbors are doing some really bad karaoke or something and having a party. I do not know what's happening. Do you know what's happening? I need to do an update on a book. That's what's happening. Okay, you stay here. Stay. Try not to destroy the desk. Okay, in the meantime, I did finish up The Staircase in the Woods, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think Chuck Wendig is just one of those authors where some stories are going to connect, others aren't. Thankfully, this is one that connected for me really, really well. This gave me kind of similar feelings to It by Stephen King. Like, not the story itself or even the premise or anything along those lines, but it's the idea of this core group, this friendship group of kids who bond as children, and they have a closeness that, like, takes over everything else. Like, even though their lives have gone completely apart, their bond still stays. And I 100% get that with my own friend group from growing up. And I just really like that type of story. And the fact that we get to see them as teens and as adults, and everything that's been going on in their lives has changed them, but it hasn't eliminated the fact that they have this bond to each other, to the friend of theirs that went missing all those years ago, and to the kind of mystery of what happened. Yeah, why don't you get down, buddy? She's fine. She's just had dinner, and so she's always a little extra wiggly and itchy and all that right after she eats. Anyway, I think the characters were well done. The balance of the timelines, the past and the present, the weirdness level of what's going on beyond the staircase, all of that just really, really worked for me. I think the writing was good. I think the pacing was good. It didn't feel like a super long novel, even though it is basically 400 pages, a little over 400 pages. I did read, oh, buddy, don't the camera. I did read the extra material, so I can count this for hard mode for my horror bingo. And overall, this was a really good time. I'm really, really glad that my prompt ball and horror bingo and this game all pushed me to pick this up sooner rather than later. So with that done, and before Kylie creates more chaos, let's figure out what comes next. Okay, so we were here, and then we moved over to the ghost because we didn't need to roll for that. So if I roll anything 3 or higher, then I will not need to roll again. That'll be our final book or square or prompt or whatever. If I roll a 1 or a 2, there'll be at least one more book before I get to the final spot. So let us go ahead and see what we get. 2. Okay, so we'll have exactly 2 more books because we'll go 1, and then we can actually go either there or there. So let me see what the prompts are. Okay, so we can either go with square 12 or square 18. Square 12 is to read a backlist book or share your TBR. 18 is read a book with Halloween colors on the cover or do something to appreciate the season. Okay, I think I'm going to go with 18, which is this spot right here. Okay, so that wasn't the ideal roll. It would have been nice to only have 1 book to finish up this weekend, but we've got 2. So the first one, I had 2 options really of which prompt I wanted to go with. I'm going with the prompt that says to read a book with Halloween colors on the cover. I think this counts. This is Hush, My Darling by Lee Kenny. This is on my TBR for the month, and it is black with silver. There's a little bit of like bluish, greenish. Green is definitely, I think, a Halloween cover. And then the sprayed edge, this is a Twisted Retreat edition, definitely has some red and orange going for it. So I think overall this is definitely a good dark story. I had actually been contemplating this as my single POV book, and then I pivoted to the arc that I needed to get to. So I'm not too mad about having to pick this one up. I don't know much about this one other than we have an American tourist named Megan in Ireland going on a journey to find some peace and family ties, but then she gets stranded and she's rescued by a family, but it's a horror book, so clearly there's something a little bit off about this family maybe. I don't know. It sounds like a lot of fun. The print in here is not teeny. It's intimidating just because I've heard nothing about it. And also, honestly, the time I picked it as intimidating, I knew my library didn't have a copy of the audiobook. Turns out I can get it from Hoopla if I need it. But this is one that I definitely can get through, I think, pretty easily in print. We'll see how it goes. And then after that, I know the final square, because it would be silly to go anywhere but straight to the door since the weekend's drawing to a close. And the prompt for that one is to read a book set in the summer or fall. So I do have a couple ideas for that one that I think will work. So I'll let you know when I actually get around to picking one of them up. It is Sunday morning. It's about 8 a.m. I think. I haven't looked at a clock in a while. And I took a shower. Now I am ready to go get some coffee and get my day started. But before I went to bed last night, I actually made it halfway into my next book. Hush, My Darling is on KU, so I've been using that to read it actually instead of the pretty edition that I have here. And the scene depicted here is pretty appropriate for what we have going on in this book. Also, don't know if I showed the naked hardcover here either, but I'm glad that I didn't use this for single POV for that prompt because it turns out it starts with Lauren. Lauren is screaming, I think is the title of the chapter. Anyway, the prologue has this girl, Lauren, and she's obviously trapped. She's obviously abused. You don't get on page what is happening to her explicitly, but she has a man in the room with her and his pants are off. So you can definitely make that judgment what's going on. It's It's dark. She's basically given up on herself and her life. She stashes her necklace away because it has her name on it, and she doesn't really own her name anymore. She doesn't want to be Lauren anymore. And she knows things are going to get worse for her. She's heard other people screaming from the basement. And yeah, it starts dark. It is indeed a dark book. The story then switches over to Megan, who is our main character in here. And she is driving around in Ireland in a rental car. It's not a great rental car. And then she sees someone dart out of the woods. She swerves to miss hitting them and instead winds up hitting a tree. And a man and his son, who's about her age-ish, comes to rescue her. She is pretty young. The girl in the first chapter, I think, was 16 when she was taken. I'm assuming Megan's maybe a little older because she's driving around on her own in this foreign country, but she's not very old. I don't think it's YA, but it's definitely on the younger end. Anyway, she is a little bit terrified of what's been going on, but this man seems okay-ish. She's a little wary of him, but the son is cute and gets her attention, and she winds up agreeing to their house. She doesn't have very many other options where she is, and she goes with them back to their house, where it's the mom, the dad, and a bunch of sons. And things seem a little bit okay at first, but they quickly take a downturn, and it gets violent, it gets bloody. She is realizing she needs to fight back if she's going to make it out of here, and it's gripping. It is well written. It definitely grabs the attention right off the bat at the beginning of this one. So far I'd say it's going well. It's definitely dark. I said that enough times so far. Huge trigger warnings going on in here. So do look those up if you have interest in this. But like I said, it is on KU. Hoopla does have the audiobook for it as well. So I did wind up downloading that a bit when I needed to get some stuff, and I'll probably do that while I'm getting my coffee again too. But it's a really fast listen. I think the audiobook is 6 hours on one-time speed. So that's why I made it, I think, just past the halfway point of last night. So I am enjoying this. I think enjoying is probably the wrong word when it's someone in such a terrible position, but in terms of it being a horror and engaging me and keeping my interest and making me want to see how it's going to go, I'm liking it. The twistedness of this family in and of itself, I think the isolation of it, all of that's working for me. So I'm gonna go get Kylie. She's gonna be a little bit dressed up today for our sprints that we're doing later on, and I'll be, looking a little more put together than just stepped out of the shower. And that is the plan. So since I made it halfway into this one so quickly last night, I'm feeling much more confident about being able to finish this and one more book today. So let's go, and I'll check in later. Hello again. I'm getting close to starting my sprints. They're scheduled for about 20 minutes from now, 25 minutes, something like that. Probably should figure that out at some point. But in the meantime, I've been watching other sprints, getting on with my reading a little bit, procrastinating also a little bit. I made some soup, some tomato and sausage soup for the week, and had some of that for my lunch, and played a little bit with my Sims this morning just to kind of take a break from reading, and finished my first book of the day. So, Hush My Darling by Lee Kenny. I did really enjoy this overall. 100% please, be careful, trigger warnings, etc. It took some turns that I didn't expect. There were some surprises I didn't expect. It's very dark. It's very disturbing. It's exactly what I kind of predicted from the beginning, but the author did manage to surprise me. I really liked our main character. I liked her determination. I felt really bad for her, what winds up happening to her, to other women who have been there, and I think I liked how it ended. It's a little bit of an ambiguous ending. If you want a very concrete ending, I wouldn't recommend this one, but I liked the way that it wound up at the end. So overall, this was a good time in the sense of it being disturbing and a little bit ick, but intentionally so. So I'm giving it 4 stars. So with that, we just had 1 spot left on the board. So there's not even a need to roll my pretty ghost dice because we are going to the final spot. And the prompt for that particular square is to read a book set in fall or summer. So the book that I grabbed, which is not one that was on my TBR for the month. I've actually done pretty well getting things that I needed to read this month anyway because of my TBR game and other things onto the TBR, but this one is something else. But it does tick off a box for my horror bingo, so I'm happy with that. And that is Smile for the Cameras by Miranda Smith. I actually had an arc for this that I did not get to prior to release, and then this one came in my Nightworms box, and I have the signed signature plate from the author in here as well. What I knew going into this one is that we have a main character who was an actress in a horror movie, and she wants to revive her career And so she's being forced to go back and kind of relive the memories of that. I am now about 30 to 40% of the way through here. I'm on chapter 13 and I'm having a good time with this one. I wound up picking it up on audio just because I have too many credits stocked up. I need to use them anyway, but also I wanted to be able to crochet today, make my lunch today, things like that. And I want to be able to successfully finish the readathon this weekend. So I figured having this on audio would be good. And the audio for this one is good. It has multiple narrators. We have in here a lot of narrative, both the past timeline and the present timeline, but we also get these passages where it's the script of the movie that they did the first time around. So we're following Ella Winters, and the first line in here, other than the script, is "The August heat sticks to my skin." So summer. I don't know exactly the timeline for when they go back to where this film was filmed. I'm getting the sense that maybe that's fall. So she had this meeting in August to discuss the film, and I think it's fall in the present day, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we get past timeline of her being a young woman, older teen, somewhere in that range, being the final girl, being the survivor from this horror movie, and what she went through from a really creepy director who's all about the sex and the pushing boundaries to her, now we know, ex-boyfriend, who at the time she's just meeting in the past timeline, and the different people on set, the crew, etc. We know vaguely that something happened way back when that she distanced herself from in the years that have happened since, and something bad happened. We know a crew member died. That was public knowledge, and it spurned a lot of rumors about this horror movie, but something else happened that the world doesn't know, is my impression, and we're getting little hints of it, and I think the author's doing well at making that intriguing, while also kind of starting to get some reveals as we go forward in time. So I'm looking forward to see what happened. The original movie was definitely a slasher. I don't know if that's going to come into play in the actual present day timeline or how that's going to play into past timeline. We are also in here dealing with grief. Our main character really has no one in her life. She had her mom, who was her biggest support when it came to acting, and her mom got cancer, and she took time off from her acting to go take care of her mom until her mom passed away. So yet again, another book sneaking in a dead mother and grief trope. So it's been a year. Whatever. But I think the reason she's been distanced from the world, from her job, from everything else, I think it's being made very clear in here, the relationship she had with her mother and what her mother did to support her and everything else, I think is well done so far. So this is very approachable. I don't know that it's necessarily currently doing anything super, super new, but I am enjoying my time with it. So I definitely will be able to finish this up on sprints this afternoon. And then I can actually read some stuff from my TBR without having a prompt in mind or something. I don't know. It feels weird after a whole weekend of, what did I get to? 6 books? Is it 6? I don't know. I've lost track. But in any case, I'm excited to keep going, and I'll check in with you later. All right, it is nearly 6 o'clock. I'm winding down my sprints. I've got about 25 minutes left on what is the final sprint. I've had a little bit of a headache coming on this last hour or so, so that's not helping out matters. So I just kind of put the audiobook on for my book, and I did finish it. And overall, I enjoyed this one. I have seen very mixed reviews for this, and I can kind of see why, because it does several different things. There is a very serious discussion in here about creepy male producers and people just in the film industry in general, mistreating people on set, in particular here about the female actresses in the original movie and how that plays out. I think it has some real solid messaging there. There's a lot of people behaving badly, and you have this young cast who do something wrong, who have a bad consequence to something they did, whether it was intentional or not. And that can kind of be a little bit more understood with kids and people who are just desperate for fame and everything else, maybe. But there's definitely adults behaving badly in here as well. The ending is over the top. You need to suspend a lot of disbelief with this one. So I think you need to be willing to do that going into this. I think it did have slow parts for me. You get a lot of discussion of other things in between kind of the action moments. We get what happened in the past, what happened in the movie, and what happened in the present day. And it does go to some bloody and gory places, but there's not constant action, I would say, in here. So take all that as you will. I overall enjoyed this one. I think I'm giving it 4 stars. I think it had great discussions. I think it kept me entertained. It was a good Sunday, turn your brain off, bring candy, popcorn read type of read. So I think this one is one I would recommend when it comes to books with a movie element tied in, with the caveats I've given already. So with that, I am officially done with Halloweekend successfully with a few hours to spare, so that's all good news. And given that this was 4 days worth of reading, I think this went really well. I think it was a good chance to get through some books that I needed to read this month. It helps at the beginning of the month because I've got a long list of books that I'm trying to get to this month, so it was easy to kind of fit stuff in. And then I added a couple things that I wasn't necessarily planning to read, but overall, I didn't hate any of these books, so that's a really good thing for a kickoff to Halloweekend. Let me know in the comments below if you're participating in Halloweekend. Which room were you exploring this weekend? What was your favorite prompt or your favorite book or your favorite activity? Let me know all the things. And if you're not participating, that's okay too. You're welcome to come join us. Definitely check out Lexi's announcement video. It's a lot of fun. There's going to be a ton of sprints this upcoming weekend. If you want to come and read with us, even if you're not officially participating in the prompts and everything, just come hang out. It's a good time. And if you have made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, leave me some sort of camera emoji for smile for the cameras. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my Halloweekend reading, more of my readathons in general, and more of my bookish content. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.